you for joining us. It's Devon and Cornwall Microsoft stroke Fabric stroke Power BI user group. Our session today is with Paul Martin, who is going to show us how to supercharge Excel on our Power BI models. Really excited to understand how this works, and I know he's going to take us through some interesting back-end parts of how it all pulls in together. Just a reminder that, and let me just put it here, just a reminder that I am recording this session, and that we will be, any questions we've agreed with Paul, because there's a lot to get through, that we will stop at certain points, and if you put a Q in front of the question, then I will be able to keep a list of them for you. So next week we have Henrik, who's going to take us through VS Code in Power BI and Git, and I know he's been spending lots and lots of time on that, so I'm looking forward to understanding more about how it works and why the Power BI project files are useful. Then we have Melissa, who's going to take us through some Power Query patterns and extraction. Then we've got Jay from the Power BI CAT team taking us through visual calculations and the new way that we can write DAX to make it easier. And basically there's loads, so if you have a log on to our events, you'll be able to scroll through, and I think we are right up now. So we've got Melissa, then Jay. Actually, I need to put Jay's name in there. No sessions I've got to work. Then we've got psychology and report design with John. Fantastic session. And then Shabnam Watson, introduction to Lakehouse. She's very, very good. And then we've got Marjolaine, who's going to take us through JSON themes, and David about bad report, good. So there's loads, absolutely loads that are on there. And I've got a few more to come in as well. So I won't go into too much with that, but you can see. So what I will do now is I'm going to hand over to Paul, because he's got a lot of content to cover, and he's going to take us through how to supercharge Excel reporting. So if I stop sharing, Paul, and pass it over to you.
Okay. Just before we start, everyone, can everyone see that okay? Sue, can you see that?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, well, first of all, thank you all, obviously, for taking an evening out. Really appreciate that. Sue's saying we've got a tight hour, so I want to really try and motor through some of this stuff. But the thing I really want to do is try and get you excited about the possibilities of Excel integrated with Power BI, because we were having a chat just before you came on, and I think I'm quite surprised, from having been to both the London Worldwide Excel Conference and indeed the Power BI conferences, is I don't think people are aware of just what's possible now. And what I want to do today is talk to you about what's possible with obviously the Microsoft offerings out of the box, and what you can also do by adding stuff like our own Excel add-in. And you will be able to get a copy of this add-in for free at the end of this, and there'll be instructions on how to do that. And obviously Sue will make the recording, and I'll make the slides available as well. The one thing I would ask, which is a bit of a weird thing to ask up front, but I would like you to make sure you don't believe a word I say. That I think is the most important thing. And I'd like you to extend that courtesy to every one of the other speakers that Sue is referring to, and the future events and any other events you go to. Because one of the things that's always complicated here is we're not dealing with theoretical demo models. We're dealing with your implementation, and every implementation is different. Complexities are different. Data volumes are different. So when you're seeing things either on YouTube or at these sessions, please think of this as, okay, that looks a good idea. Let's try it on my data set with my business logic before you actually believe it. And a good example of that was, funny enough, was just what Sue was talking about before about the Custo database thing. I asked the guy on the stand there, because I thought, wow, this looks cool. I said, that looks amazing, is it? He goes, what do you mean? I said, is it amazing? He goes, kind of. It's amazing and it's rubbish. I went, all right, go on. He goes, it's amazing because I built this in half a day. He said, I kid you not. And as Sue said, it's got 1.2 billion rows of data and yada, yada, yada. It's all amazing, but it doesn't work. He goes, yeah, the problem is at the moment there's not the governance behind it. And unfortunately, if you can't sync it properly with Azure, and if anything you wanted to delete from it, you'd have to rebuild the application. So, of course, in that example, they will get there and they will sort those things out. But it highlights my point. Don't believe what you see. My point of view, the first thing don't believe is I've worked 30 years in MI. Well, that's a lie for starters. It's actually 40 years in MI. I just can't bear myself to put the 4 in front of the 3, to be honest. And I've worked on all sorts of things, from implementing systems through to account management, sales, etc. And I'm a fanatical Excel fan, but Excel on top of data warehouses, and now obviously on top of Power BI. That's what I really get excited about. And I've been involved in the Microsoft stuff since 2000, which was the start of Microsoft BI with a thing called OLAP services, which then became analysis services, which then became Power BI in terms of the data engine. So I'm not saying I've seen everything, but I've hopefully seen quite a bit, and hopefully that will come across. So I'd like to dive in straight away to Excel and showing you on top of Power BI models. But one of the things a CTO I worked with many years ago said to me, there's only one thing you can't add to a project afterwards. And I said, what's that? He said, that's the architecture. And it's important that before you dive in some of these things, particularly if you're working on new projects, that you understand what you're trying to do here. And I think the thing that's exciting for me is there is a world of difference between where we were in 21, 22 versus where we are in 23, 24. And that is really, really good. I also want you to actually have a look at understanding the differences. Some of you may be working on small projects, some of you may be working on big projects. There's a very big difference on how you spend your time and how you use your time between reporting and perhaps doing all the other things like data management. And I think the biggest thing is if you're trying to sell Power BI and Excel into your organization, particularly Power BI, I think you've got to be really careful. And the customer there doesn't have to be customer as in me talking as a software vendor, but customer could be your internal customer there, is being careful what they hear is actually what you've said, because I've seen a lot of differences here when people have been trying to introduce new stuff. And then we'll look at what do you get from Microsoft out of the box? What can you do now with your Power BI and Excel 365? And then look at, well, why do we need to do more than that? And this isn't theory. This is based over 100 of implementations that we've done with our product. And we didn't sit there trying to think, well, Microsoft is not good enough, let's write something new. Don't have the time for that. But we have seen from what people are trying to do that we do need to add more stuff into Excel so that Excel can be treated like native Excel reports in the way Excel users use information rather than as business intelligence users use Excel information, because I think there's a big gap between the two. And last but not least, well, how do you get hold of it? And I said, don't believe it. Get hold of the add-in yourself. Try it on your data. See if it does do the sort of things that I'm telling you. And you can also get a free session with us as well to help you plug it in to your data, just to see that as well. Okay, so let's look back 21, 22, where there was a lot of confusion. The confusion was, it was depending where you started. People might say, I had one customer of another YouTube specialist said, oh, we get a lot of customers who said, well, we don't really need Power BI, we just want an Excel solution, and we've got Excel and we've got Power Query within that, so we want to mash up this data and we can then do all the reporting in Excel and it's cheap. Well, question mark A, is it? Yes, it works, that's all okay, why not? But actually you can't share this stuff, so it's not very efficient. I did an example where we built a COVID model in Excel with Power Query and a COVID model in Power BI with Power Query. One of them was 8 megabytes after three months, which was the Power BI one, and the other one was 80 megabytes. Exactly the same thing in theory. So not very scalable and not easy to get around your organization. And also, what happens if Sue wants just the UK data here and I want just the US and you guys want the UK, US and Austria? Can't easily do that in that scenario. So I said to Sue, I was going to say some things a bit contentious at the beginning of this. In my mind, if I worked for Microsoft now, I would rip Power Query out of Excel. I think it's a total and utter waste of time. And that will hopefully generate some comments in the thing. Because if you then look at it, then, okay, well, what happens if we're a bit bigger than that? Then the answer would be, well, you can go to Power BI Pro now. Now you've got all the Power Query stuff in there. You can load all the data in and you can front end that with Power BI and you can front end it with Excel. But, there are limits here in terms of scalability, and there are limits in terms of number of users, and there are limits in terms of application complexity, in terms of getting decent response time on your dashboards and Excel reports. So then you go into an environment where I'm kind of familiar with, where you say, okay, well, we won't do the stuff in Power BI. We'll perhaps load it now into analysis services cubes. And then we can front end that with Excel, with Power BI, with third-party add-ins like our own one, and you can then access it from there. And then Microsoft came along and went, no, hold on. If you're doing this seriously and you're really in the large enterprise space, then you should have Power BI premium models. And then you can do the same sort of thing there, but you can really scale this up to crazy levels. And you can front end all that with Excel, Power BI, and third-party add-ins. Now, all of these architectures, to be honest, work well in isolation. But where they don't work well at all is if you get it wrong and you decide to move to another one. That is pain in terms of cost and in terms of rework. And in some cases, you may almost have to start again. So that's not good. Now, the sharp-eyed amongst you might be thinking, well, hold on, the medium architecture and the enterprise architecture are almost the same. So why don't you kind of get rid of these customers and push them to this one, get rid of these customers and push them to this one. And then if you have to upgrade from that one to that one, well, that's not particularly difficult. And from a technology point of view, that was good advice. But then you, of course, had the other side of all of this, where you said, OK, if I look at a Power BI Pro license, if I had a 10-user system in the UK, I'm looking at 82 quid a month, which is not too bad. But if I run out of horsepower and I now need to upgrade those to premium, you can see the magnitude is a little bit more. It's very hard. We never used to talk about Power BI Premium to our customers, just too frightened. Because how would you say to someone, yeah, you're 82 quid a month. Yeah, it's going to go up slightly. Does £4,105 a month sound okay to you? And of course, you know the answer to that. But thank you, Microsoft. The best thing Microsoft has ever done, I bet no one else has said this as an item, but the best thing they've ever done, the second best thing they've ever done, and the third best thing they've ever done is to introduce this concept of Power BI premium per user. Because yes, my 10-user system doubles now to £164 instead of £82, but I get all the power of Power BI Premium. I get everything that Pro can do, but I get premium functionality. I get much larger models. I can go from 10 gig to 100 gig. And in SQL Bits, there was a number of people talking there, which I would agree with. They say you can almost allow on a 10-to-1 compression ratio from source data to the actual Power BI model. So you're looking here at, 1,000, you're looking at terabytes here in premium per user, which is a big set of models. And of course, from our point of view, you get this thing called XMLA support, which all that means is third-party software like our own EIB Report Studio and Excel can talk then to the Power BI models directly. And this is a massive game changer because in 2024, I think for the first time, there is one architecture now. And I would say, maybe controversially, that even if you only wanted an Excel solution and you didn't want any Power BI, your first thing you should do is buy a Power BI Premium per user license. And then you build your Power BI model with Power Query in the same way as you would with Excel. And then you just use Excel to front end it. But the advantages here is the Excel side is not bloated. And it means if Sue does need the UK and I have the US and you have both plus some more, we can do that in minutes. And we can do it efficiently in minutes. So yes, I get the argument of, yeah, but what happens if I'm a smaller business and what happens if I haven't got the budget? But think about it. If you suddenly have those requirements, the cost of you manually trying to circumvent those issues would be more than doing this in the first place. So it's worth bearing in mind. And of course, the second thing is this scales.
I think Paul's frozen. Is it me or is it Paul?
No, it's a general.
Yeah.
BI dashboards.
You froze for a moment there, Paul. Sorry, we missed you for a moment.
Oh, sorry. Am I back?
Okay. You're back. You're back. Only probably about a minute.
Oh, apologies. Sorry. So what was the last bit you heard, Sue?
Now you're going to ask me about if it scales.
Yeah. So I think the nice thing is here is even if you are only looking to do an Excel solution, because you said I don't really need Power BI from day one, the first thing I would do is buy a Power BI premium per user license, build the model in Power Query, then put Excel against that, because you get no differences from using Excel natively. But if you need to handle other things like data security, or you need to in the future add Power BI dashboards, you can. It's just all in there. And adding data security is a 10-minute job. It's not actually trying to think, how the hell do I break down a 50, 80 megabyte model? And of course, the other thing is you can then obviously add Power BI dashboards if you suddenly do want to do that later on. And you can add third-party add-ins like ourselves. Plus, you get the benefits, of course, of all the stuff that Microsoft is doing with both PowerPoint and Teams can all plug in to this one model. So the thing that really excites me beyond belief here is, I think from the first time ever, there is now an architecture that genuinely scales from SME through to enterprise. And it doesn't just scale technically, it scales commercially. And I think that's the big difference. So I think in 2024, we are in a very, very different place. But I would ask you to bear that in mind if you haven't started yet. This slide itself is a 10-minute slide. We don't have 10 minutes for that. But what I am saying is if you're dealing with small applications versus large applications, there is a very different way you spend your time. Because obviously here, you probably know most of the data yourself because you're probably prepping it yourself. So you have the luxury of spending probably 65% of the project building reports. In large apps, you don't have that. You're lucky to get 5% of the time doing Power BI and Excel. And unfortunately, that doesn't mean to say people are sympathetic and are going to go, well, we understand if you only get 5%, then these reports can look a bit rough. They can't. They have to look every bit as good as the ones down here. You just have less time to do it. Gives you a clue of another reason why we've done our add-in, to make that simpler, because you have to achieve more in less time. So what do most companies have before they have Power BI? Well, obviously the answer is Excel, of course. And you know that that's shaped in loads of different ways with CSV downloads and ODBC links and pivot tables. And there's probably consolidations with V lookups, X lookups, H lookups, God knows what's, one sheet per customer, product region. There's always only one person who knows, however big the company is, who knows how to put this stuff together. But unfortunately, they often have manual inputs, which again doesn't lend itself to BI tools, including Power BI. You know, we can do all the data cleansing you like, but invariably someone does before they put it to the board go, yeah, but I don't think we generally get, you know, 100% of that forecast, even though we've done this forecast from the ground up in November and December. So I am going to skew that. I'm going to slug that and actually only put 90% of that. And that's what we're going to present at the board level. You can argue whether that's right or wrong, indifferent. That's what happens. So there is intervention in Excel. Also, the psychological aspects we don't get is a lot of the time when people have developed report packs over the years, those packs are generally accepted by management as the way of running the business. It's the way they've been doing it for years. Having said all that, they wouldn't be talking to any of us, whether these are internal people or vendors talking to you, unless there was problems with this. And the problems are all the things you would expect. They can't change anything because the model's glued together by one person. They don't do new analysis because it takes forever to do. The information is normally out of date because it's taken them days to do all the checks to make sure all their Excel numbers add up. We had the issue I was talking about earlier on with Excel and Power Query. The spreadsheets become huge. They're hard to distribute. They're difficult to maintain. Are they really accurate? Question mark. All those good things. And of course, what we do is, and I say we, I mean generally we wade in and ignore these first two things because, yeah, the Excel reports are rubbish. Ha, ha, ha. Yeah. You've been doing that way for years. Time to move on. And OK, let's focus on this bit, because that's where we want to take you. And then, of course, we kind of go, hey, so, you know, what are we going to do for you? We're going to give you these beautiful Power BI dashboards. They're amazing, clearer visuals, you know, graphs where you've got all these rubbish numbers. You can drill down from anywhere. It's all very slick. You don't need a lot of infrastructure. You just need a browser or a mobile device. You've got centralized data management, so your IT people are going to love you. You've got one version of the proverbial truth. And yeah, if you're new to Power BI, dashboards may take hours. They may take days. They're not going to take weeks, which is where you are at the moment. How cool is that? And your old Excel spreadsheets, yeah. Get rid of them, lose the risk. That's all cool. That's what we do. That's what we home in on. And this is the thing to be careful of. What the customer, whether that be an internal person or us talking to a customer, actually hears or agrees to in most cases is they buy all your benefits of the Power BI dashboards. That's all cool. They also, though, think, and I don't lose anything. Because if you can do all this clever stuff in Power BI, these crappy Excel spreadsheets that I'm producing at the moment, I'm sure you can replace those really, really easily. I'm not sure how you're going to do that, but there must be some Power BI way of doing that. And that'll be simple. That'll be easy for you. And that's good because the management team still have what they expect to run the business. This is a very, very bad place to start a project. Very bad, because this simply is not the case. So word of warning here, reality check. If you're selling in Power BI dashboards as a way of replacing an old established Excel proven MI set of apps, that will never actually work. And you're going to have the conversation of people are going to have to give up their reports. And that may be okay in some cases, but in some cases, you need to have the Power BI integrated into Excel in a way where you can do both. So you can keep the old reports, but those reports are sourced dynamically through the Power BI models rather than having your daft X lookups and V lookups and what have you. So be very, very careful of that, because I've seen lots of situations where people end up running both systems because the management team still want to use these Excel stuff and you've sold them how to use Power BI. So you've got to be careful there. So if we look at what do you get then out of the box, so forget anything our company is doing now, looking at standard Excel integration, the first thing you get is the ability to export static data from Excel to the Power BI service. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over and look at a Power BI model we've got. This is our insurance demo. And one of the things you could do here is you could go to perhaps a table of data and you could go, right, export data. And you get various options with that, but I'm just going to take the data in the current layout. And what that will do now is that will export a Excel file from Power BI down into Excel ready for loading. So I just click on that and open that up. Doesn't do a horrendously nice job of that, but I can hit enable editing there, and then I can obviously do what you do, make these look a little bit nicer, and then I can obviously kind of go through here, do all the sort of things that we'd expect. So within a couple of seconds you can kind of make that look half decent, and you can say, yeah, okay, that's not too bad, I've got my stuff. So for one-off exercises, I think that's good. If I want to dump stuff down quickly, that all kind of works, but it is static. So if you want to do that next month, you'd have to do the same thing, and you'd have to go through the formatting piece, and there's no context here. You have no idea when this was done. Doesn't even give you a date timestamp. So if someone said, when did you do this? Was that after the load we did into Power BI? You'd probably be going, I don't know, actually, not sure. So not ideal, but it serves a purpose. Now, of course, the other way of doing it, if I go back to Power BI, the next thing you can do, I was going to go back to my slides, but we haven't got time, so I just might as well just do this, is you can do export. Now, this, though, you might not see in your Power BI tenant, because this has to be enabled at a tenant level. So if you've got a secure conscious organization, you might not have this switched on, and there's not a lot you can do about that other than persuade whoever looks after your Power BI tenant to switch it on. But if you do that, that will again create an Excel file. I think this is a bit clunky now, because by default it opens it up on the web, which you may want. So now you're into an online pivot table. But I think if you're doing anything fairly seriously, and again, you get these unfortunate lots of warnings, I would here do file, and I would save as and download a copy to my Excel. So this now will download a copy to my Excel, and it will create a pivot table. I get another warning to say enable that, and then eventually I get there. So I can now sort of say, okay, if I look at a particular measure group, I could put that in my values. Oh, sorry, got to enable that. And then I could put my measures in my filters, and I could pick one of those. You get the idea, sort of building a standard pivot table here. net written premium. Yeah. And then I could obviously build my other stuff around that. And I don't want to spend too much time in here. You know how to build a pivot table. But if I go to premiums, let's just drag the ASAT into here. Now, this is different because this is live. So if I save this spreadsheet away, and next month I now open this spreadsheet, this will generally refresh with live data from the Power BI model. So that is good. But again, you've got to start thinking about it. A lot of customers we deal with have number of Excel reports and they want to control who has access to these Excel reports. So now if you think about it, I've got this on my workstation. What do I do now? Do I publish it into OneDrive? Should I be allowed to publish it into OneDrive? Should Sue automatically get a copy of this report? If she shouldn't automatically, how do we give her a copy of this report? There's lots of kind of governance issues all around this, but you can now produce a live Excel report. So that I think is better. I think this is a lot more useful, to be honest, than the export. And then there's the other way. You know, at the moment, everything I've done relies on you having access to Power BI and you going into Power BI and doing stuff. But of course, you might say, well, I'm not a Power BI user. I don't even want to go into Power BI. I just want to use the data from Power BI. So Microsoft have introduced this thing here where you can go insert pivot table and from Power BI. And if you do from Power BI, this is quite slick. It gives you a nice set of Power BI data sets on the right-hand side. So it's going to go and get that data set. And if you insert a pivot table, this is doing exactly what I did before. But the difference is I haven't had to go anywhere near Power BI. So if I'm an Excel user here, I haven't had to work out, oh, well, do I know why do I have to go into Power BI just to pick something? I don't really want to do that. I can just actually start and finish here. I'm not going to build the same pivot table. You know how to build pivot tables. So this, I think, is more Excel friendly because if I'm an Excel user, I don't have to see Power BI. I can just actually treat Power BI as I would any other data source and start building my pivot tables accordingly. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yeah, look, yeah, it all makes sense. I think, you know, obviously there are, you know, there's different things that we can talk about, like row level security, etc., with the data sets. And there are quite a few questions in there. You know, going back to, but we can ask those at the end, but it was just really, you know, it was the Power Query. Why would you take that out of Excel? And also what was the reason for the size difference between the Excel report and the Power BI report?
Yeah, kind of interesting. I'll touch on that now because this is where you have the difference between techie people and non-techie people. As a non-techie person, I'm thinking, I don't get this. I mentioned this to our CTO and he went, well, it's bleeding obvious. Really? Tell me then. It was because it's pivot tables.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So he said, you're building pivot tables he said, don't delude yourself. Just because you've got Power Query in Excel, you're now putting pivot tables on that Power Query and the pivot tables cache the data. So you're exploding the data. Of course you are. And that makes sense when someone explains it to you, but that's the fundamental difference, the reason why. So that is the trouble. It made it quickly unscalable. Now, the other thing we're just to address why would you do it in Power BI? Because you can do stuff with row level security. You can do it really, really easy if you do it in the Power BI model, where it's not quite so easy to get different slices available from Excel.
Yeah, I guess if you're connecting to the data set, then the row level security will follow down.
Yes.
And then what was the other question? The other question was, why would you take Power Query out of Excel? There was a few rumblings about that one.
Yeah, I kind of thought there would be, because why would you not make it future proof? You know, at the moment, if you've got Power Query in Excel, A, you've got all the management issues that we've just explained, and B, if you suddenly then do want to put a Power BI dashboard on top of your model, then don't kid yourself now, because Power Query now in Excel is not the same as Power Query in Power BI. It largely is, but Power BI now as Power Query is more advanced than Power Query in Excel. So you're now going to have to lift your Power Query stuff out of Excel and you're going to have to put it into Power BI and you're going to have to rewrite a few bits of it and then you'll get it working. Why? If you stick it in Power BI in the first place, even if you don't want to use Power BI, just use the Excel front end, you get much slimmer Excel workbooks. You get all the row level security stuff kicking in automatically. And if someone then comes up with the bright idea of, actually, we wouldn't mind looking at a dashboard, you can do it instantly.
Yeah,
you don't have to rewrite
yeah,
it.
for me, it'd be you're hitting on the data flows then, because the data flows are hit within Power Query. So if you want to take Power Query out of Excel or BI, then you can use the data flows to manage. Yeah. So yeah, I suppose it's choices. Just having a quick look. Pavel said the problem with analysing Excel is some users can overload the capacity easily, and you've got no control.
Yeah. Wouldn't disagree with that.
In Excel, you use Power Pivot. Pavel said you have a single source of the truth. And that was about it, I think. If I've missed something, people put it in the chat and I'll ask when Paul stops for breath again.
And an interesting point about the one about overloading Power BI. That's a very interesting one. I'll come back to that one. And so so I've put these in slide form just so you've got the benefit when you see this afterwards as well. So we've covered all these things now, how you start from there. So now you're on to why do you need more? I think the first thing is, and this I think is a big thing. I've got a vested interest in saying in this, but this is one of the fundamental reasons why we developed the add-in. Excel reports must be able to replace what's there now. So in other words, if you introduce Power BI and I've got a set of Excel reports that I like because I'm using those for my monthly reporting, you have to be able to plug those in my opinion, into the Power BI data set. With our add-in, you can do that. The other thing that I have to say I don't like about Power BI, and I don't like about some of the other dashboard products, is a lot of the time when you're doing exception reporting, you want to interact with the data. So in Power BI, if you want to do a top N or a bottom N, you have to hard code that. And yes, I know there are a load of YouTube videos that say, oh yeah, no, you don't. You can actually get around that. But just because you can get around it doesn't mean you should. The more things you have to do, the more chances you'll screw something in the project or you'll run out of time. And from an Excel user, I want to interact with Excel. If I want to do something in Excel, I type a value in a cell and my formula picks that up. I want exactly the same when I'm using Power BI data in Excel. I want to be able to do a top N, and I want to decide if the revenue's above 10,000. I want to change that in an Excel cell to 20,000. I expect the Power BI data to refresh in Excel and change. We also need to traverse our numbers and audit our numbers without knowledge of the product. As I said, I've worked in this market for a long, long while, but I hate myself in previous lives, and I hate people saying, it's so simple, self-service, anyone can actually do this. Rubbish. And it's not because of the problem with the products. The products are easy enough now. But you just imagine if I give you, say, a 120 dimensional Power BI model and go, oh, the good news is you can slice and dice this in any way you want. Yeah, right. Unless you understand the data model, you've got no way of doing that. I haven't helped you at all. So what we tried to develop here is a way of traversing the numbers without you having to know about the product. That's the key thing here. The other thing is where you have lots of Excel reports. Well, how do you expect you're going to consume them? Let's just buy into the fact, forget our product for a second. Let's just say we are going to have lots of Excel reports, and we're going to share those Excel reports out to our user community. How do we do that? How do we expect them to open that? Do we expect them to open those in Excel and do file open, Z drive, P&L reports, P&L? Not very slick for non-techie users. So we've actually had a way in Excel where you can deliver this as a complete application. And last but not least, we all love to think we're all online, and most of the time we are, but a lot of people still have to send out static output to different users. So what happens, we have one charity organization that has 80 cost center managers, and they have to send an expense report every single month to those 80 cost center managers, but they need to produce that for just when the slice of the cost center is that particular cost center. And then they have regional managers where they want to see the region and their 5, 6, 7 cost centers, and they want to automate that and send out the static content in Excel all nicely completed. And we have the ability to do that as well. Now, there's loads of other reasons, but they are the fundamental things that we found and why we've developed our add-in. So I'm going to show you some of this. So again, I don't really want to go into this on slideware, but there is the pixel perfect. There is this thing about how you enter values to drive exceptions, etc. And there's this thing we call train of thought analysis, where you can traverse your data without having to know anything about the product other than how do I right click on something. And then you can package it all. which is what we were talking about. How do you package something in Excel so it looks like a black boxed app rather than just a series of spreadsheets? Okay, so let's have a look at how does that look. So I'm just going to go over into our demo environment. Can everyone see a blank Excel workbook? Yeah? Can you see it, Sue?
Yep.
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah.
So as I said,
up.
you'll get a link at the end of this, and you'll get a link when we follow up with you through Sue. If you install our free add-in into Excel, you'll see there'll be a number of ribbons that appear into your Excel environment that start with EIB. And surprisingly, if you want to build a Power BI report, you go to EIB Power BI, and then you start building stuff. This does also connect to analysis services cubes, also connects to SQL and Azure data sources as well if you want to build stuff dynamically from in there. But don't worry about that for now. We're just going to focus mainly on Power BI. Now, of course, you can do file open and save all your workbooks to disk, but we also have a gallery that you can save that in. And if you start scaling the product up, then that can be in an Azure database or a SQL database. So you're actually saving all your spreadsheets as blobs within a database. And the only reason for boring you with that from an end user point of view, it means your IT department could actually just back up one SQL database and they would have all your Excel workbooks. And also we can provide extra levels of security. So we could have scenarios where perhaps myself and Sue have the same row level security, same data access, but Sue has access to a report that I don't, even though in theory I could be able to create that because I've got access to the data, but I might want to restrict it at a report level. So we get extra levels of security. But most of our users wouldn't actually run the apps like this. They would actually, if I just put this into full screen mode, this is how most of our users run the apps. So you've got a black boxed Excel menu. And one of the things I wanted to show you was how do you replace like things, first of all, that people already have. So one of the things I did was I typed in Google, show me nice financial reports in Excel that I can data drive. And this was the best I could find on the web. So it looked quite cool. And what these people were saying was, you can download our report. It's a template. And what you have to do is you have to fill in this bit. And if you fill in this bit with your data, then you get this nice financial report. And it's a static report, i.e. it's flat, but you can at least go in here and change the year. So based on the year here, if I click on there, it will change the numbers. So this is nothing to do with our product. This is an Excel workbook off the web, but it's kind of representative because that's what you're going to face if you're replacing existing Excel spreadsheets, because people are going to have stuff like this and they're going to probably have a sheet here where they're doing all their VLOOKUPs and their consolidations and God knows what. So what did I do with that? I took that spreadsheet and EIB-ized it, for want of a better word. And hopefully when I open this, the first thing you should notice is nothing. It looks exactly the same. That's what the customer wants. And I've built in the same functionality. I wouldn't do it using our product the same way, but I did here because I thought I'll keep it in exactly the same. So I can go between multiple years and all that stuff and flick between that. That's all good. I can flip between the years in exactly the same way. But I've also then said, but this is connected to a Power BI model. So I want to be able to introduce this as, rather being a flat report, I want this to be a multidimensional report. So I can now go and actually pick a particular company here. I could pick a particular cost center. And this is the point. You know, the point is this looks like a customer's existing pack, but I've plugged the Power BI data into this so that now I'm giving the users what they want, i.e. it's what they're used to. But hopefully I've got rid of all their consolidation stuff and I can just source that from data from the Power BI database. So that's kind of conceptually what we're trying to do there. Okay, sorry, I'm just looking at my notes here a second. The other thing you might want to do, which we put in the product, is that one of the things we wanted to make clear was when people drill down on reports. So here I've gone into Power BI database here, and I've got a profit and loss that hopefully looks like a profit and loss. But you'll see if I take a year here and drill down on 2019, you'll see that as I do that, the formatting for what I've actually changed drills down. So actually you can see that if I drill back up, that will go back up to just plain formatting. Likewise in the rows, if I drill up on sales, then you can see that is just now in plain text. So we're trying to make it obvious where people can drill down. So you can have formatting not just against the data, but you can decide whether you want to change that formatting as people drill down on the data to make it clearer. Okay, and I'll show you some of this when we get onto a building report. The other thing, if I do, this is now an insurance base. I've kind of looked at a couple of finance examples now. This is looking at an insurance report. And what I want to do here is that I want to bring back queries from 2 different data sources. So the top data source here has telematics data on this. So this is taking data from the vehicle and showing me how good I am as or not as a driver by policy number. Both queries are linked on policy number. You can do that very easily. But here in Excel, if I decide I want to change that and bring the actual insurance risk down to 50 and increase that, say, to 95, you can see the data and stuff is changing dynamically. So we can use native Excel stuff to not only drive the query, but obviously drive the formatting. And all of these Excels are native Excel cells. So this is, again, where a big difference from where we are to, say, a pivot table is all of these are just Excel cells when they come back from the query. And I'll show you that when we build something from scratch. The other thing you'll find that people want to do is stuff that you can't easily do in a BI product, but people want to do. And here I home in on finance users, because finance users are funny. They always want things just so, and quite rightly so, to be fair. So this is a simple report, yeah, actual budget forecast. But when I double click on actuals, I then get my 12 months worth of actuals. So nothing rocket science here, but what a lot of finance users want to do and what BI tools don't lend themselves naturally to is what happens if I want to home in on May and have then actuals to May and then extrapolate budgets to the end of the year. I can do that with our add-in. I can actually click on there and then it will show me my actuals from Jan to May and my budgets through from June to the end of the year. And then I can have an Excel calculation in here, which is what this one is, which is outturn, which is obviously equal to whatever I've got in the 12 months, however many actuals plus my budgets will equal my projected outturn. So I can easily combine Excel formulas with the actual queries to provide a very flexible reporting environment, all on top of Power BI data sets. Okay. Right. So the other thing I want to look at is that within the Excel environment, you can provide a complete application environment. So one of the things we've done here is we've downloaded all the Microsoft Power BI models that are publicly available. And we've published them to a Power BI Premium per User workspace that's in our tenant. And you can access those directly from the actual Excel menu. So if we go in here, here are all the 7 Microsoft models, and we give you some credentials to get you in to do that. So if you actually download our software and install it, everything I'm showing you here, you will be able to run. We don't just download in the software, we will download the whole demo. So everything you're seeing here, you can run from your desktop in this way. And we provide the credentials here in this option here. Okay, so what I want to go back now is show another example in train of thought analysis. This is where I was saying people want to traverse the data, but they don't necessarily want to know how to use the product. That might sound a bit weird, but just bear with me. So I'm going to connect to one of Microsoft's models. And I was saying to Sue before we came on that a lot of these models are not very well put together. These are Microsoft's models, but doesn't really matter. But that is the real world. You know, a lot of the time we have to put reports on things we inherit. So here is our product sitting on top of a Microsoft model. And you're looking at things you can change. You can change the measure, you can change the year, all good stuff. But what happens if I wanted to analyze industry by something else, another dimension in the Power BI model? So I'll home in on business services. All I have to know is how to right click. And if I right click and say analyze business services, the add-in picks that up. If I then say I want to analyze that by product, what that will do is create a brand new Excel report for me on the fly. I didn't have to know much as a user there. It will create a brand new Excel report. It's put business services up to there because that's what I homed in, and it's now shown product down the side. Now, if you said, oh, damn, I didn't mean business services. I want this report, but I wanted it for something else. This report, new report, is a live report. So I just pop that up and say, sorry, I didn't really mean that. I really meant computer software. That's what I really meant. And then it will then live and go away and get that data. And you can carry on. You could say, well, actually, I want to carry on my train of thought now. And I want to look at trade show data. But actually what I want to do, sorry. So I'll get caught up in Teams finding this. I want to actually analyze that by product category. And that again now will build another new report. And now it will leave product in the rows. It will put product groups in the side and move the campaign up into the rows. Now, if you look at this and decided, oh, yeah, this is a report I want now, you can obviously just save this report away and that will be available to you next time. But you didn't have to know how to build this report. All you had to know was right click. And of course, when you get into full authoring mode, you can do a lot more. You could go into here and say, well, actually, I don't like the fact that this is word wrapping here because we use auto fit by default. So you can say, I don't want to auto fit the columns now. And now I want to, space those out a bit. And that's the report I want to do. And now I want to change the campaign type from trade show and go back to total campaigns now and redraw that report. And you have things like drill through automatically built in. So if you said, I want to drill through on accessories, if you double click that data now, that will actually go away and drill through to the underlying detail behind the Power BI model. So hopefully you can see straight away that we've been able to traverse the data without knowing much about the product. Now, I've not scratched the surface here, but I want to then show one from scratch and I want to be conscious of time. So I'm going to show one other feature before I then say, well, how do you build this from scratch? And the other feature I wanted to show was, what about if we wanted to build a report pack? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back to the top.
Can I just ask a quick question whilst you're navigating? Takimi wanted to know, this add-in, is it connecting to the source data with an API? And I said I thought it was connecting to a Power BI model, but
it's connecting to a Power BI model. It can connect to a Power BI model. It can
using
connect
the XMLA endpoint. Are you?
That's exactly what it's doing.
Yeah. So just check. So it's using an XMLA endpoint. So do people have to have a premium license?
You have to have a premium per user license to talk to the Power BI models. Yes, you do.
Okay.
So
I'll let you carry on.
Because you're right. Unfortunately, Microsoft in the Pro, they're not giving you the XMLA endpoint. So it's trivial to upgrade. You just literally click on your workspace and change it, but you've got to pay for the license to do that.
Okay, I've other questions, but I'll wait to the end.
Okay, so I've opened up a report on top of one of Microsoft's Power BI sales and marketing. And what I want to do is I want to produce a static set of reports for this. So what I can do is I can go into our distribution module here and I can say, well, what do I want to produce this static set of reports for? So in this example, I've decided that I want to run this report. You can see at the moment it's on sales dollars, but I also want to run it for total units. But also I want to vary the manufacturer. So I've decided that I want to produce 4 manufacturers. I want all manufacturers. I want Abbas, Natura and Pirum. So if I run this report, it's going to produce 8 reports because it's going to produce these 4 manufacturers by sales dollars and units. And if I run this report, I can decide where I want it output to. I can output it as an Excel workbook. I can output it as a PDF. Do all those nice things. But if I just run this report now, you'll see that when it starts to run, it will say I'm going to produce 8 reports here because that's what it's doing. It's going behind the scenes now. You don't see anything changing on screen because that slows it down. This is not too bad when you're doing it for 8 reports. One of our customers does it for 1,000 reports. So you don't want it changing all the time because it does slow the actual thing down. But you don't need to worry about that because you can see the output when it's finished. So it's going to go through and run 8 reports for me. It's then going to build an index for me, a nice little contents page. So it says creating content sheet, and then it's going to be done. Come on, we've got 10 minutes. So it's now done that. And this warning, I know it basically just says earlier versions of Excel don't support bitmaps when you copy them across. So I don't need to view the log. I know exactly what that is. And what I'm going to do now is pick. This is the output it's created. So you should be able to see that we're live, because this should say hopefully the current time. So it says we created this on the 26th of the 3rd, 1849, and it's built a nice little index for me. Built this on the fly. So you can look at sales dollars for all manufacturers, total units, and I can hyperlink to that as well. So if I hyperlink to that, I can see now I'm on sales dollar for all manufacturers. If I just quickly loop through, you can see total units for all manufacturers. You can see sales for ABAS, units for ABAS. You get the drift. So you can use this to create static report packs and auto email these to your end users. Okay, so let's forget now that that's all very nice, but we started from this nice position, I guess, of I'm showing you stuff that's already been built. So let's now go to File New. I'm going to go to Power BI, Build New from Power BI. I'm going to pick the Microsoft set off. So I'm going to connect to a workspace here. I'm going to connect to the Microsoft workspace. So what we've done here, as I said, we downloaded the 7 models you can get off the internet from Microsoft. We published them to our premium per user workspace, and I'm now connecting it to it. So when I click on Designer, that is going to connect me. Unlike a pivot table, you don't start from a complete blank sheet of paper. It will connect to the first 2 dimensions it finds, and it will actually then render some data. So you never get a blank table here. For those of you who know the details of things like measures, one of the things I hate about measures in pivot tables and Power BI is they're treated differently from every other dimension. They're not using our product. Without doing anything, you can just double click on measures in a slice and instantly use measures as you would any other dimension. Measures to us is no different. So you don't have to do anything. Oh, sorry, it would be good if I actually left myself enough time to actually click the thing I'm interested in. So I want to actually default this to say sales dollars. We will inherit all the formatting from Power BI. So in Power BI, they've obviously formatted this in dollars. We will inherit that. You can override that formatting in our product. And you need 3 things to build a report. You need something in the criteria, what we're going to change, something in the columns, something in the rows. If I take something out of the rows, you'll see it says not enough selections to draw the report. Now I want to just put in a hierarchy in here. I'm going to put geo roll up because I can show you a couple of things as well, how you can build queries in our product. You can obviously just pick things like you would in a pivot table. So if I go into geo roll up here, I've got all selected. I could go through here, and if I just want random things, I could just pick AL, I could pick CA, I could pick whatever I want here. So I can just go through, and as I add them, very similar to a pivot table, I can just add those in, nice and simple. But what I really like is that you can use rules in here, and the advantage of using a rule means that whenever this report connects to your Power BI data set, it will obey the rule. So if you've added things into the Power BI model, it will evaluate that rule and automatically put those in your report. So what do I mean by that? Imagine if I just go here, say, I want the members directly below, that will add that as a rule. So now I've got all geo roll up and I've got the individual ones underneath. But if you added anything to the Power BI model, you wouldn't have to change the report. It would automatically refresh it with all those in there. Similarly, another nice little one we've put in here is if you went, say, 1 level down and thought, you know what I'm really trying to do? I'm trying to produce a report at this level. You could just right click on here and say, show all members at this level. And that will then go and get every single member at that level. So I've got all now, and now a breakdown of those. So this sort of stuff makes maintenance a lot less than it is with other approaches. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take geo rollout out for a second here, and I'm going to put product in my rows. And of course, in here, I can double click as well. If I double click, that will drill down automatically. So I've now got products in there. And I think what I'll do in my columns, I think I'll put months in there. I don't really want date in there. So I'm going to put months in my columns, and I'm going to put year up here. And I'm going to just change my year to say I've got quite a few years. I think 2014 is the last one with data in it. And of course, I could drill now on here. So you can see we're working away in Excel. But what I can start doing now, if I put a filter on this, I'm going to start doing it the way Power BI would do it, where you have to interact with the product. So if I had a new filter here, I'm going to say I'm interested in top 10 report. I don't want to include all in the query because I want all to always be there in this case. I want to just do the top 10 based on everything below all. And when I click on OK, you should see now I've got all as a total and I've got my top 10 products underneath. But that's, I'm sorry, I think is really rubbish. And that is unfortunately the way we work by default in things like Power BI. What I want to do is I want to actually say, no. I want to do top N and I want to put in a value here, 10. And I am going to just make this a name range. I don't have to. I could refer to it as H5, but I'm a bit anal here. I just want to put top N as that range. And now what I'll do is I'll go back to my filter and I'll edit that filter. And I'll say, actually, what I want to do is base that on top N. Now, when I apply it, you'll see nothing will change because I left it on 10 and that's what it was before. But this is the difference. If I'm an Excel user, I want to actually now make that 5. And now I've got my top 5. This is how I see myself as an Excel user. I don't want the constraints of having to do so. I want to be able to package stuff using the product ISL. So I can obviously carry that on. I can say above N. And I'll say, let's take a number from here so I get the same formatting. I'll just Control C, Control V that, and I'll put in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1 million. And I'm going to use that as above N. And then I'm going to go back into here, add a filter. And actually now say I want to do, I want to keep that on all. I want to do this above, and I want that to be above N. And again, I want that based on there. So now I'm evaluating 2 things in the comfort of Excel. And of course, you can see now I've got top 20. If I make top 20, but only if I put, say, above 10 million, we should lose everything from row 14 onwards. Then you'll see now I'm doing the top N first, and then I'm applying the above N. So you can see it works more native with Excel. And just to finish this, because I haven't got a huge amount of time, I just want to say, how else can we integrate with Excel? Say we wanted this data here, and I want to turn that into a chart, and I want to put that somewhere separately. What I can do here is I can actually say, okay, I want to go into Smart Copy Paste here and take the data and put that into a new workbook. I want to paste the data there. I want to copy the formatting. I don't really want to take the auto fit on there. I want to just copy that across, which I've done. I'm not going to be, let me just then take this now and do something in Excel where I just insert a chart. Apologies here, I'm not going to smarten this up because you get the idea. We can all build Excel charts. So now I've got this actually live connected, but I know what you're going to say. So if I go back to this sheet and change one of these, it will change the chart. But you're going to go, yeah, but you wouldn't want to do that as a user. No, I would agree. You'd want to actually take this stuff here and smart copy paste it. And you'd want to move that over to here as well. And then you'd want to copy that across. And now if I double click on sales dollars, and change that to sum of units, that will refresh the query in native Excel here. And if I go back to sheet 1, you'll see I'm already on sum of units. So hopefully you can see the thing working very, very natively within Excel. And if you look at all of these values.
Brilliant, Paul, well done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to finish because I'm conscious now. Just to go on to the
yeah, there's a couple of questions as well.
Okay.
So if we can start to wrap it up, that would be really helpful.
Do you want to take the questions now or?
Well, so questions, people. I just want to give people a chance to ask questions before we finish because we've only got a couple of minutes left.
Yeah.
There was lots of people just, so amazed with what you could do. And Jude said, if anything, this easily puts the existing pivot tables out of a job in Excel. And, some people weren't aware of what you could do in Excel. And then the question was about providing self-service for BI for Excel and the licensing as well. That was the question. Yeah, so Jude wants to know, what's the cost? Is there a trial? And for me, I was interested in the licenses, because if you're connecting with a PPU license, then generally in BI or Excel, to have the authentication, you also have to have a PPU license.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. You need a PPU license for the people who are going to access these data sets. Obviously, you don't need PPU licenses everywhere. If you're only going to give certain models to certain people, then only those models need to be PPU enabled.
Yeah, so everyone that's going to use it will need to have a PPU if they're going to be interacting. And then Jude said, is there a trial and what's the cost?
Well, the good news is, and I'm trying to get out of remote desktop because I'm keep getting overlaid. I'll actually show there is a free version that you can try. Can I stop sharing a second and then just reshare?
Yeah, of course.
Because I'm in remote desktop, I can't get out of. Right, okay, I'll share again.
And I just said, obviously I can't give out people's details, but I can. We can share your details and they can approach you.
But what there is, I'll just come back to the end here, and we'll make this available so you can put this out to people.
Yeah, I've got a GitHub site, so I can add it into the GitHub site so that people can access it through the GitHub site.
Okay. So you can run this URL now.
Perfect.
So excelinbusiness.com VRB. Now, what you get as the free one is the free only allows you to use this for one user, but it does allow you to connect to all your Power BI models and build all the reports. Okay.
But they will need to have a premium per user license.
They need a premium per user license for Power BI, but
if you don't have one, then you can. I think it's still on a trial for 60 days. Is it?
Yeah, you could do that.
You'd get the Fabric trial. Does the Fabric trial give you PPU?
Not sure, to be honest.
Yeah. But
certainly the PPU free license would give you that.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to try it as one user, or if you're a small company and you were one user, then you can use it completely free. There's no restricted functionality. If you're a bigger company and you also have SQL databases or multidimensional cubes in analysis services, you can also build stuff and save it away, but it will tell you are not licensed to roll this out in a production environment, but it won't stop you from doing anything. You can build it against cubes as well. And if you want to actually say, okay, I've tried the free version in terms of I've got it working single user, but I want to make it available to other users, then we do have a pricing model, and I won't go over it in detail now, but it's not particularly expensive.
Yeah, people can reach out to you.
And the other thing I wanted to make sure that you are aware of is that if you then book a free 60-minute session, and you can just do this by just emailing me, to be honest, if you put something like subject database 24, we'll give you 60-minute free consultation in terms of taking your installed software and putting it on top of your model. So if you said, well, not quite sure how to go about it now on my model, can you show me? We can do a Teams and take you through that.
Oh, brilliant. That's perfect.
So I hope that was useful, guys. I'm sorry it was a bit rushed, but I think we kind of got there roughly within your hour. Hope it was useful.
I thought it was fascinating to see what you can do in the software that you've provided, and, the flexibility to be able to work within Excel was really interesting. Any
it's just
last
a different
questions?
way of thinking. I mean, it sounds stupid. You think, how can it have? But there's 13 million lines of code in our Excel add-in, and you think, wow, this is not something trivial. But there is a lot of things that you can do in it. And what we're trying to do is obviously make it as native as is possible, because that suits Excel users more.
Yeah, definitely. And there are, as we've alluded to many times, they said, imagine if you could offer it via Microsoft Store. Plus you'd make InfoSec happy too.
Yeah. But
the goal.
Yeah, I think where we want to be, I'm not going to lie, where we'd like to be as a vendor, I quite like the route. For those of you who know Tabular Editor, I like the route they went. They kind of had a free version. They have a chargeable version for those who need it. They use the chargeable. For those who don't need it, they use the free. Yeah, I want, from a commercial point of view, that's where we kind of want to be. But we want to make sure people can prove this. I said about, don't trust anything. We don't need to. You can put this on your data or your cubes or your Power BI models. You don't have to take my word for it.
Where does the data stay? Within the Power BI model or within the spreadsheet? I suppose you've downloaded it, so it's on your machine.
No, it's all within the Power BI model. The only thing you save in your spreadsheet is, obviously, if you had a report with, say, that slice of data, that slice of data is the only thing you'll save. So when you look at your spreadsheets, our spreadsheets are generally 10, 15, 20, 30K. They're nothing.
Okay. Yeah, so everything's being fed from the XML endpoint. Exactly the same as in analysing Excel, or similar to-ish type of thing.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
No, that is the point. It has to be small. Otherwise, you run into all the issues that we started talking about beforehand.
Yeah. And it's just, people say it's just amazing that you've invented this and that it's from the Power BI data and the software. So I need to put the GitHub, Devon and Cornwall GitHub. If Paul sends me the PowerPoint, and let me just put the link in the chat for the GitHub.
So the GitHub link is for the people attending today's session, and then I'll just send you the PowerPoint and you'll put it in the GitHub.
So what I'll do is I'll put it in the GitHub, and anyone that is a member of Devon and Cornwall has got access to the GitHub because it's on the front page of the meetup group. So anytime, any resources, it all goes in there so they can access it. And you click on the link, and then with the PowerPoint, you should be able to just download it. So there's a little download button that you can then download. So
that's the case.
Let me just quickly share my screen 1 second, because otherwise I'm going to be late.
I'll stop
sharing. But I know.
Then.
So here, when you click, because I know what it's like when you're trying to access Git and you've never used it before. So you go onto Devon and Cornwall, and this was Greg's PowerPoint. So you can see all the PowerPoints are there. If you click on Greg's PowerPoint, it comes in there. See this little button there, download raw file. If you click on it, it will come into your downloads, and then you've got your downloads there and it will open. So it's that easy to be able to access the PowerPoints. So
cool.
So you don't have to worry about all the hard coding stuff and everything, because I too struggled a bit with GitHub and how to do it. So there you go. I will stop sharing. Okay. So it just remains for me to say a massive thank you, Paul. I know I put you under pressure with an hour, but those is the rules.
Those are the rules, and thank you, Sue, because having seen all the stuff that you've actually been doing behind the scenes, I'm kind of aware now of just how much effort goes in arranging these things. So a big thank you for doing that. Really appreciate it.
Oh no, I love it because I get one-to-one tuitions and I get to hang out with everyone. So, and then when we went to SQL Bits, we all, like we got to meet each other and everything. So it's all part of giving back to the community, and and you've got a fabulous tool. So if it can help someone in their job, brilliant. It's all about sharing so we can all learn together, because there's enough work for all of us. So,
and I think, as I said, it is also thinking about the architecture. I know some of you perhaps might have thought, I just want to get straight into Excel, but I think you do need to think about some of those architecture points you made earlier on as well.
Security, governance, updating, validity, all of these things to make sure that when you are producing the reports, they're right and safe and accurate. So so lots and lots of thanks, lots and lots of applause. And what I will do is I will ensure this gets into YouTube for tomorrow so that you can use it as well. But thank you so much.
Well, thank you all for attending. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and have a great rest of the evening, everybody. I'm off to do hot yoga. So take care.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.